Spirit Talk Live with Scott Allen is for entertainment purposes only.
My dear friend, a wonderfully, wonderfully gifted medium. I've seen him in action. It would blow your minds wide open. He's just incredible.
Patrick from London, you are on the air. Welcome to the show.
I mean, this reading has meant more to me than anything. And I'm so grateful.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Spirit Talk Live. My name is Scott Allen. I'm so happy to be back with you. We were on a little hiatus last week. I was filming the season finale of Dark Echoes for Amazon Prime, and that has been quite the experience. I can't wait to share that with you once the episodes are uploaded and ready to watch on Amazon. But it's been quite an experience. So we filmed the finale last week, and that's why we didn't have a live show. But here we are. I'm back. And boy, I have to tell you, we have a wonderful guest here tonight. And, you know, I have been doing a lot of travel lately, not just for Dark Echoes, but also for my events. I'm in Pennsylvania this weekend, and next weekend I'm in Maine, and I'm kind of like all over the place. But I was in Naples, Florida, back at the end of February, and I was invited by the lovely Reverend Michelle Love, who I had met through my spirit mentor, my spiritual mentor, Joe Shiel, and she had invited me to her spiritual center in Naples. And I went and I did a public demonstration on Friday night, and the spirits connected me with this woman that, I didn't know anybody, but I was able to make a connection for her. And then she was in the next day and she had a private session. And then I realized who she was. And it's not that she's incredibly famous, but she is so incredibly connected to the spirit world, and just a gift. And I think you are going to truly enjoy meeting with her today, as I did. And I'm so excited to have her on the show. We booked this quite some time ago, so I think you're going to really enjoy this. Tonight's show is going to be a little different than we normally do. Usually we do readings, and she doesn't say that she's a medium, so we're not going to do that tonight. But we are going to have a chance to chat with her. The lines are open. The phone line is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to call in and ask questions, or chat in the chat and ask questions. But I think you're going to be very, very interested with what she has to say this evening. So usually I do our notes through the veil at the very, very beginning of the show. And I was preparing for tonight's show, and I'm meditating, and then I happened to see something, and I said, you know what, I found something else that I'm going to read to you. It's not a reading. It is a little poem, but I want to read it to you because I think it is just so touching. And when spirit gives me something like this, I take it. I run with it. I think there's a reason for it. And I think that is why it was shown to me, was so that I could share it with you. So we're not going to do Notes to the Veil. We'll save that for next week. But I am going to share this with you tonight, this poem. It's very brief, but I'm going to read it to you before we bring our guest out. So let's see. So this poem was written by Donna Ashworth. I don't know Donna, but it says at the bottom that the author is Donna Ashworth. So I want to make sure I give her credit for this. And this is for people who are grieving. And I think we all can relate to that in some way at some point in our life. It goes like this. How do I live without you? Oh, my love, I do not. You are with me from the moment I open my eyes until they close. And even after that, on the plane of dreams where mortals and souls meet, you are still with me. I have not learned to live without you. Perhaps I never will. The truth of the matter is, you are always with me still. You walked such a blazing pathway when your feet were on this earth that your imprint lingers on, and I place my own feet in your steps one by one. How do I live without you? It's really very simple. I do not. I have yet to live without you. Perhaps I never will. Perhaps the key to grief is that you are always with me still. And I just love that. I just thought it was so beautiful. And I thought maybe somebody needed to hear that tonight. I think when we do this kind of work, when we do the readings, when we do, it's not just for entertainment. You know, we do the shows. It's not just for entertainment, but we deal with people with this bucket loads of pain and grief, and it really is nice to see the healing that takes place. So I wanted to share that with you this evening, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. So let me share a little bit about my guest tonight. My guest is Candice Sanderson. She is author of the books The Reluctant Messenger, and you're going to find out why that name is what it is. She's going to share that with us tonight. And if you've ever heard of the Monroe Institute, she's connected to the Monroe Institute as well. And I'm glad that you are here. Please feel free to type in the chat if you'd like to ask a question, and feel free to give us a call on the phone line. And the lines are open. Numbers 775-264-SPIRIT or 775-264-7747. And I've also put her web address at the bottom so that you can find her, www.candicesanderson.com. And Candice is Candice. So Matthew Kondracki, hello. So nice to see you. Glad you came in to say hello. Antone, good to see you back again this week. And Thomas, my friend, thank you so much. So without further ado, I'm going to bring out our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Candice Sanderson, how are you?
I am great, Scott. Thank you so much for having me on your program. It's an honor.
God.
It truly is.
The pleasure is all mine. And it really, really, you read for people, you meet people, you never really know who they are and how connected they are. But I knew when I had a chance to talk with you personally that you were different. You were connected.
Well,
you
I
really
certainly
are.
know that I'm different. People have told me that my entire life.
Well,
and now I'm just embracing it.
They used to tell me to put a bag over my head, but I haven't done that. So, but I do think that you are so connected and gifted in your own way. And we all have those gifts. They're just different.
Yes.
We all get something different. And I see it even with people who do what I do. Mediums. I read with other mediums from time to time. And the way we read, the way we get our messages, the way we deliver our messages, we're all different.
Yes.
And so really it's a beautiful thing. And when I get a chance to meet someone like you and have you on the show, I'm just so pleased. So welcome. And thank you so much for being here. How did this start for you, Candice? What was the beginning? How did your journey begin with all of this?
Oh, my goodness. Scott, do you have like a date in your life that you will never forget? Like a time and a place that is forever etched in your memory?
Absolutely.
Well, for me, I might forget an anniversary or a friend's birthday, but this date, never. For me, it was August 28th, 2013. That is when my life changed. But let me give you the backstory. I am a psychologist, which means that I lived by the scientific method. If I could not measure something with my physical senses, it did not exist. It had to be a figment of my imagination, or maybe it was something worse like psychosis. But pragmatic, show it to me. If you can measure it, it's there. If you can't, it's too woo-woo, it's something else. Well, that August 28th changed me, but I want to back up about 3 weeks. It was July 2013. I was attending a program at the main campus of Monroe Institute, which, you mentioned them.
Sure.
The Monroe Institute is this absolutely fabulous place where people can go and learn to expand their awareness. I was on their main campus, which is right outside Charlottesville. But Bob Monroe, who built this place years ago, he was a radio broadcaster, and he spontaneously had an OBE, an out-of-body experience. And then he had another, and then another. He went to doctors. He thought he was dying, but once he realized he was not dying, he was so curious that he started investigating this. He was a sound engineer, not by training, but by experience with his radio broadcasting. And he kept experimenting with sound, and he found that he could, with certain sound technologies, he could duplicate for some people this out-of-body experience. He started off with something called binaural beats. Now, he passed away, I think, back in the like 1995, but the institute is still there. The research is still ongoing. And now that sound-based technology has expanded to include all sorts of other beautiful technologies. Now, enough about that. I just want you to know that Monroe Institute, what they do is all scientifically based, and they use this beautiful sound-based technology. But for me, for the average Joe, this is perfect. This is the lazy person's way to meditate. Now, they won't tell you that, but that's what it is. All you do is you slip on your headphones, you close your eyes, and you do nothing. I mean, it can't be more perfect. Those frequencies do the work for you. Now, I went to a program called Lifeline. It's actually a graduate level program at Monroe. So I was interested. I was very curious about these kinds of, woo-woo things, but I had no experience, wasn't psychic, nothing. But the Lifeline program, it is meant to contact recently departed people, because they said they're easier, and help them transition over to Focus 27. Monroe, as a researcher, did not use woo-woo terms. He stayed away from religious terminology. He used that neutral, very neutral language of science. Now, in my background, Focus 27 is heaven. I'm a recovering Southern Baptist. So I knew what we were, supposed to do is bring these newly departed people to heaven. I cannot think of a more selfless and profound experience to help someone in their final transition. It's just touches my heart. But that's not why I attended. I attended this program because it was a prerequisite. I mean, Scott, I didn't even know what soul retrieval was. Like, give me a break. I'm a scientist. You can't tell me we're really retrieving people who have died. Now, I could see where maybe I was retrieving an aspect of myself, maybe from some childhood trauma, but rescuing people who just died? No way. Now, I tell you this in the audience, because this actually set me up for success. I was not tied to the outcome whatsoever. I did not have any kind of performance anxiety. I didn't care if I rescued anyone because I didn't even think that was a thing.
Sure.
So without being tied to the outcome, we start the first exercise. I'm just kicked back, and it's very well guided. They say, look for someone, and they want you to get all this data. And it's like, yeah, nothing's happening. Well, I'm not surprised. And then all of a sudden, I reach outside of where I am, my bed, and I grab my iPhone. I don't know why. And I open my recording app and I hit record. And out comes the name Robert. Now, I'm not going to say his last name for confidentiality, but three syllables. It's not an uncommon name, but I don't know anyone by that name.
Sure.
And then I heard Topeka, Kansas. I've never even been to Kansas. I'm thinking, this is crazy. And then I thought, what is this? Then I heard the word Jackson. And I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I knew that Jackson was not a family name. Well, immediately on goes my psychologist hat. And it's like, oh, yes, this is confabulation. You've got a puzzle. You don't know the answers, the pieces to the puzzle. So your brain just makes things up. So yeah. That's what this is. Well, here we go. We're getting ready to debrief our first session. My phone's in my hand. I Google Robert Topeka, Kansas. And then I almost an afterthought, I say obit. And holy cow. Now, to be completely transparent, I did not say the word cow. There was another word that came out.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
it was,
no, I get it.
it was like, okay.
A one-syllable word.
Yes, yes, but I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah.
And as I looked at it, he had actually passed away 3 months ago to the day of the retrieval, which made that even more interesting. And then I got to the name. So I've got the first and last name, city and state. Then there's that word Jackson. And I was right. It was not a family name. He lived in Jackson County. And his place of business was had the name Jackson County in it. And it's like, blew my mind. But something else happened. As I read his obituary, oh my gosh, Scott, he was a psychologist. Now, I didn't pick up on that, but on a level that I really wasn't able at that point in time to fully understand, I realized that's why we connected. We shared the same energy field or the same vibrations or the same frequencies. And it absolutely blew me away. Now, for the rest of the week, I got first, sometimes middle and last names, cities and states.
That's incredible.
I got all of these hits. And by the end of the week, I was no longer retrieving one person at a time. I would do 20 or 30 people at a time. Wow. But what happened in this experience is I went to Lifeline with no belief. It's like, that's nonsense. It doesn't exist. Then I believed it. I had the data to prove it. But when I left, I no longer believed it. It was not a belief. It was a known. I knew this to be true. So what happened is my entire belief system crumbled like a phoenix that reinvents herself from the fire. I didn't realize it in real time, but less than 3 weeks later, when I'm driving to work one morning, August 28th, 2013, my life changed.
So what happened?
Since you asked.
You didn't drive off the road because you're still here with us, so that didn't
That's
happen.
right. It was interesting. I was working as a school psychologist. I was a clinical psychologist and a school psychologist. School had just started. I'm driving to work an hour early. This is just what I do. It is very early in the morning. It's like 6:15. Very short drive, 10 or 12 minutes. Nobody's on the road. So anyone close to me, no one was, but I mean, it was safe. But you know how you can get in that space where your car knows the way, you're on automatic pilot. Yep. I'm really kind of paying attention to those back-to-back meetings that I have. And all of a sudden I get this beautiful message about a flower. And my first thought was, oh, that is so pretty. I wish I had thought of it, because I knew it was not for me. The cadence, the language, the vocabulary. But the message said, and I didn't hear it with my ears, but it came in with such specificity, it's as if I had. But they said a flower reaches down toward Mother Earth, and then it ascends toward Father Sky. And when it is in perfect alignment with source, words I don't use, it produces a flower. And a flower is a flower. So hyphenating that word flower of energy. Then they said humans too are flowers of energy. So if we're grounded, if we know what goals we want, and we just open to this perfect alignment, we can open to just a world of possibilities. Now, my first thought was, okay, Candice, what's going on? You're psychotic. So I'm going through the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic manual we use. It's like, no, I'm not psychotic. So then I just did what I think most people do when you have a novel situation. It's like, forget about it. I mean, I had to hurry up and get to work so I could be there an hour early. I'll just deal with this later, or better not, just like not deal with it at all. I get to work, I grab my things, I'm walking in the side entrance, no one's there. The sun is just starting to come up, and I see this beautiful royal poinciana tree. Now, for your listeners who don't know what a royal poinciana tree is, it's subtropical. There's different colors. This one was like a bright orange red, and it's got this gnarly trunk and this gorgeous canopy. The leaves are like mimosa leaves. They almost look like ferns. And
Okay.
the flowers look like orchids. But that tree, now mind you, I've passed that tree 100 times. It's a tree. That tree on this day called me to it. It was the first mystical experience that I was aware of. The light, the
Go ahead.
sun was coming up. There was this beautiful shadow of light and dark on the ground. And I am mesmerized. And that tree, Scott, I realized was as sentient. It was as much alive, if not more so, than me. And then my eyes went to this tiny bud that had not yet opened. And I realized all that nonsense I just heard about a flower and humans being flowers, all of that came back to me. And I realized that bud, that unopened flower, was ready to blossom. It represented me. It represented you. It represented all of
Sure.
us. And when, I don't know how, I mean, I could have been there for hours. I know it wasn't, but I was outside of time and space. And when I walked in the building, I had no idea whether this would be a one-time experience or whether it would continue. And it is still continuing. I got to every morning I would get in my car, I would hit record, and the messages would come, just like dictation. I would hear, not really with my ears,
Yeah. Yeah.
when to start a new paragraph. They would tell me how to end each sentence. If I made a mistake, I heard, air quote, strike that. They would give me the correct wording. So it was absolutely perfect. It's like
So let me
Monroe
ask you
Institute.
this, if it's okay. I'm curious
Yeah,
because you hit
yeah,
record, you're getting it like in your now I understand, those of us that do this kind of thing, you
yeah,
understand you're not necessarily hearing it with your ears, seeing it with your eyes. It's
correct.
all here. Sometimes you just, at least in my case, I just know it, right? Or you
Yes,
get that
yes,
flash of it,
yes,
right? So I'm sure it's very much the same. You're repeating what you're hearing. So they're
yes.
telling you what you're supposed to say, and you're saying it and you're recording it.
Mhm.
Is it your voice?
Yes, it is
It is.
absolutely my voice. It
Okay.
is not like a trans channel.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
am just the scribe. So I am driving. So there's a good part of my awareness that is
Mhm.
driving. And then there's the observer that's kind of like watching all of this. And then I'm also just listening. And while I'm still paying attention to the road, just speaking what I air quote hear in my mind. And
Wow.
what I would do each night, I would get home and I would transcribe this. And after months, I had hundreds of pages of typewritten notes. And some of them I could validate. Like, I heard something about Chiron. They were talking, these were like star beings. I know nothing about star beings.
Right, right,
And
right.
I knew it was pronounced with the hard C, like, but I saw Chiron. I mean, holy cow, again, when I looked that up, I was shocked to find out that there was actually, it's a hybrid that's part comet, part planet called
Mhm.
Chiron. I knew nothing about that. I
Right.
had messages from someone called Kuan Yin. I'd never heard of her, but I ended up getting so many different messages that I could validate, um, that I had this tipping point, and I realized this was truth. I always wondered, like, why me? I mean, I'm not
Sure.
some guru
Right.
who's gone off and studied these things. I am a pragmatic psychologist. But
Hmm.
one of my friends, well, she's a friend now, and I had been a guest on her podcast, and she ended up doing an entire YouTube series called The Reluctant Messenger Unleashed, where we went through my first book, chapter by chapter, like a book
Sure.
review. But she said, Candice, you're the perfect candidate because you're a psychologist. You are a trained observer. And it's just like going to that Monroe Lifeline program. I didn't care. I stepped back and just let the messages flow. When they first started coming, I didn't say, oh my gosh, I'm channeling, how great, or that's really scary. I did nothing. I sat back, allowed the information to come in without judgment, and then the data spoke for themselves because
Was it a
I could
surprise for you
validate it.
as it started to happen? Were you
I mean,
surprised?
it was like it was a shock. I mean, I never anticipated this whatsoever. I was just so surprised. And I didn't tell people. I mean, I told just my family and my close
Sure.
friends. It's like, I'm not going to tell people this. But
Hmm.
then the messenger said, when you write your book, it's like, what? No. So I was very, very reluctant, but I did put my information out there. And Scott, part of it, I was fearful of, here I am, a psychologist. And if I start talking about connecting with people or angels in the angelic realm, or I'm connecting with people who have passed over, who had messages, which is what you do for those that are left behind. But the information was just fabulous, and it it changed me. Every time I would step into those frequencies, um, my whole makeup changed little by
Sure.
little. And when I would come back, it's like I'm different. I learned to see, and I just call that the 5D as a lazy person's way of saying it's not of this earth. So if
Hmm.
anyone says, oh, well, it's a 4D, 5D, I don't know. I just call it 5D. But when I step into that 5D, my energy frequency is different. And when I come back to the 3D, I bring some of that with me. I'm at the point now where I very common for me to say, I straddle both worlds. I have one foot firmly planted in that 5D, but that foot in the 3D isn't exactly grounded,
Get
but
it.
I'm just between these spaces. And when I go into those fields, um, I've learned to view the world, including that world, through the lens of energy. It's not really woo-woo. It's not really magical, although it feels very magical. But being able to expand in such a way where you can start seeing energy and then sensing information as it comes in, and then you can actually learn. You don't have to learn. Um, you can go back to those spaces at any point in time. I mean, we do this all the time at night when we're dreaming. You can learn to expand that state and reach those magical states of awareness.
And do you think, and I know this through Monroe, that you've talked about the sound
Yeah.
energy, and it's almost been described to me as by putting on those headphones and going into
Mhm.
those beats, those,
Yes.
whether it's the binaural beats or whatever it is, the
Yeah.
sounds, you get into a state of meditation that it would take years to develop and
Yes.
get into. And I think that's fascinating. And I would love to see what that would do with to someone like me who already has a little bit of that connection.
Yes.
I can
Oh. Oh.
completely understand your feelings because
Yeah.
while we are so different in what we do and what we get, it's very much the same. I
Absolutely.
didn't recognize what it was. And, I remember I would feel like I was getting a message from someone that I was with, and I'd say, "Oh, I have a woman here. She's like your grandmother, and her name is Genevieve, and she died on Easter." And I'm thinking she's going to say, "You're out of your mind." She's, "Oh my God, how did you know that?" I don't know how I
Right.
know that, but how do you know? How is what I'm saying to you making sense? It was like, oh my God, it's an incredible thing.
It
It's
is, isn't it?
incredible.
And then the more you do that, though, you learn to trust with a capital T. You may not identify how you picked that up, but you did pick it up. And, of course, we can, it's through our filter. So we may not be spot on in all different places,
Of course.
but we know that the source is true and that information that we are receiving is information that we are receiving.
And they don't waste it.
Lifeline, no, and Lifeline proved that for me. When we're off the air, I'll share some last names with you too that
Sure.
you can even check out.
Right.
But something
Right.
you said, I want to talk about just briefly. Um, you know, Monroe gave me the training wheels. I don't need that anymore. It's great to have it. But
Right.
again, my wording is the lazy person's way to do this, but it really is. But there was a write-up years ago in, I think, New York Times about a group of Tibetan monks,
Yeah.
have this history of this beautiful meditation that came to Monroe for, I think, Gateway Voyage, which is usually their entry-level program. And they were very quiet and respectful, didn't volunteer information, just, and they were just beautiful, holy way. After the first exercise, they came downstairs, they were la, la, la. They were so excited. They said what they experienced in that 30 or 40-minute meditation had taken them like 6 or 8 years to get to in their training to become a
That's
monk.
incredible.
So,
It's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Can
So I
we
would
answer
love
a
to see
question?
someone like you go.
I would love to go. I would love to go. I want to just bring up a question here on the screen. Thomas asks, is it always positive, or are there negative messages that teach you as well?
I would love to address that. I'm sure that there are negative things that go on. I am very lucky that I have not had anything negative. Now, one thing Monroe does teach you, and it's something that's just second nature to me, is I always protect my space.
Right.
I always reach and ask for the highest and the best, and that's always been there for me. Now, there's also there's like operating systems that work in
Mhm.
the background when you start connecting. Some of my messages that I get, Scott, are from these messengers that will sit down and give me formulas. they'll tell me how time works, different things like that.
My
But
gosh.
one thing they talk about is an emotional guidance system. So when you are in a space and let's say, Thomas, that something negative starts to come in, you can ramp your energy up if you haven't protected. And you can raise your energy higher and higher so that anything that might be low-lying energy falls away.
Right. Right. That's good information. I always tell people I don't connect with anything negative. It's not in my intention. And I think for at least for what I do, the intention is there that it's all for the you say the highest and best. And I even create this dome around the people that I'm
Yeah.
with because I don't want anything coming in that's not connected to them. It's their family, it's their friends, it's the people on the other side. So you
And
get
you know
you
that
go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's perfect because what I do is also create like a torus field around me that
Mhm.
learned from Monroe. And if I'm working with someone, I do the same thing with them, just like your dome. It's a dome of light, it's a
Right.
protection. And when you have that sort of energy bubble around you, it's not only keeping your energy field intact so no one can drain your energy, it's preventing any low-lying energy from coming in. And if you're in a place like I do not like to go to the mall, too many people, I will set that bubble up and then I'll put mirrors on the outside just in my imagination.
Sure.
imagine it and it will happen. So that helps with the protection as well too.
Good for you. I mean, and it's amazing how powerful that intention is. And I don't get bad things. This is why I don't walk around with it on all the time either.
Right,
You learn how
right.
to shut it off. There's a time and a place for everything, and that's not it. I'll tell you a little secret. When I was in Naples and I met you for the first time on that Friday night, I sat in the car. It's not good for me to mingle with people before I
Okay.
go out.
Yeah.
I just need to kind of like clear my head and make space for the messages.
Mhm.
And I went, there's a little three, not three-sided, you know what I mean? The screens that you can have the
Yeah.
three wall screen. I sat behind it as Michelle was introducing me, and I sat there and I thought to myself, "Oh man, there's nobody here. I've got nothing. Guys, I'm going to be out there all by myself. Don't leave me," right? As soon as I stepped out, boom, there they were. They know when it's time. They know
Yes.
when it's the right time, and they show up, and they
Yes.
don't waste words. You said something too. We go through our human filter, and I know that if I say something that someone doesn't understand or it doesn't make sense, it's because my interpretation of it is off, but the information is correct. Now, I'll give you an example. I had a reading recently, and I got it was the husband and how he passed and what he was like when he passed, what he was like before he passed. And then I said, "Oh, he's showing me a fishing rod and a fish. He must have been a fisherman." She said, "Oh my God, I understand everything except that he hated fish. He hated fishing." And I thought, "Well, why are you showing me that? Why are you showing me that?" Well, she was sitting on the porch. And right when I said that to myself, she says, "Do you mind if I go inside? I think it'll be a little quieter in the house." She was at her lake house. She went in the house. She
Yep.
says, "I'm going to sit in his favorite chair." And she sat in the chair, and, the camera or the phone or whatever it was she was using was in front of her. And I said, "Turn around. There's a fish
Yes.
and a fishing rod. He's telling you to go and sit in his chair, or this is his place." And I thought, I was sitting here thinking, "Oh, he must have loved fishing." No, he's just that's it. He wanted her to be in his chair.
And
I
see,
mean,
that was such beautiful guidance. And so she, without really knowing it,
that's
still
right.
picked up on his energy and moved and went to that place so that when you saw where she was, it all came together. Now, one thing you can learn to do when you're traveling in the 5D is to freeze frame those kind of experiences.
Hmm.
My messengers tell me, for example, when you make a connection to the other side, like I've had a connection with White Buffalo Calf Woman. I never heard of her till I got all this information. But once I make a connection to the 5D, whether it's an ascended master, someone who's passed away, or whatever, they tell me it's like walking through a field of snow that's 4 feet deep.
Hmm.
When you are here in the 3D, you go to them. You can always find your way back. And I think they told me that early on in case I had some fear. Well, what if I can't find my way back? No, you just turn around and you see your path. But you start laying this electromagnetic path. I don't know whether it is or that, but they told me it was. So I'll take their word for it. And then you can find your way back. We have, there's a couple systems in our background that's always working. When
Hmm.
you travel in the 5D, and this would be for the person you're reading as well too, there's a part of us that is like a GPS system. So it remembers where you've been. But
Mm.
when you're in the 5D and there's something that's significant, you can do what my messengers call bookmarking. So you can put a bookmark of your person in that chair, fishing rod in the background, and she can always go back to that. And when you get a little more experience and not do this only in your dreams, you can go back to it and you
Sure.
can freeze frame it and you can actually stretch that time out and continue the conversation with dad. You can also, in an out of body state, which is what we are when we do that anyway, rise above it and see what's going on in another part of the house or another part of the town. When you step into those 5D spaces, those spaces, Scott, where you are getting these messages, we step out of time and space. And although, and then we're guided, but the energy is so subtle that most of us don't realize, oh, why I had to go in and sit down. But it's Spirit's way of guiding you so that you can have this beautiful outcome.
And you know, I don't feel like I'm anywhere other than in my body in that space. I don't feel like I'm traveling. I don't feel like I've gone anywhere. I do notice that my speech picks up. I talk faster.
Okay.
It tends to be, you know, I tend to like almost like it's spewing out of me, but it's still me, and I'm still very much aware of everything that's going on.
Me too.
I can't say now, because you've had out of body experiences. That's not what this is. That's something different, right? When you actually feel like you're traveling into the next plane.
I'm not sure. I think that an out of body experience is more like it's not the state that I initially thought it was. Okay. So many people, when they first have an out of body experience, it's like you roll out of bed and you know, float to the ceiling and you see yourself in the bed, or you don't know you're in an out of body state till you try to go to the bathroom door and your hand goes through it. It's like, oh, I'm having an OBE. Well, there are other out of body experiences using different energy bodies that we have. When we roll into that first body, and there's so many different names for our energy bodies, so I'm not going to name them. They change with whoever, you know, whatever you read. But when you're in a denser energy body, you're going to be hanging out in your neighborhood. And you know what? That's great. That's a lot of fun. But my messengers tell me, why take a tricycle when you can use a Lamborghini? So what you can do is use a finer energy body. And that energy body will allow you to be into an even more expanded state of consciousness. So of course you're in your physical body and you know that you are, and you're talking to your client, but there's an aspect of you that is also communicating. And what you can do is you can actually learn to transition more of yourself into that out of body. But the out of body experience is really, it's a spectrum. It's not what I was originally led to believe. But I've been in studies where they're doing EEGs while I'm meditating, and I end up fitting this protocol of oh, this is an out of body state. And I said, yeah, of course it was. I know exactly what I was doing when that happened. And I would repeat it in the next exercise, you know, like 20 seconds into the exercise. And then when they would debrief, they would say, oh, 20 seconds into the exercise, you had an OBE. But that's only been in the last couple of years, Scott, that I've actually embraced these incredible experiences, and I've called them out of body experiences. But I mean, what are they? Well, I know that I'm not in my body, although, you know, some say you're trilocating, not really, but in essence, because you're your physical body. You know, I know when I'm driving to work, I'm behind the car.
That's right.
Behind the wheel of the car, and you know, I'm safe. But then there's another aspect of me that is open to hear messages.
Right.
And then there's another aspect of me that's the scribe. If I'm in with a group of people, I'm writing things down. If I'm in the car, I hit record. So I can be, an aspect of me can be in different places at different times. I mean, let's think about our observer. Everyone has an observer. Now, I like mine. She's nice enough, but she has like a biting sense of humor. If I'm not known for being very graceful. So when I'm walking down the street and I trip, she says, oh, I hope no one saw you do that. Or she's the first one to say, you know, those shoes don't really match what you're wearing. It's like, oh, hush, hush, go. But we
She's in
have
the
this.
spirit world, or she's an actual person?
No, that's that voice in your
Oh, it's the
head
voice in your head.
that
Gotcha.
will
I gotcha. Yeah, yeah. When you
that
said
will
observer,
tell
I
you.
wasn't sure if you meant while you were going
Yes.
under. I get that. Yep.
So this is what I call my observer, my witness.
Hmm.
And once you start realizing, you have this dialogue with your witness and you say, why did I think of that? Well, who is that? That's not you.
Hmm.
Why did you do this? Well, who's saying you? You realize that that is someone, that is an aspect of you that is observing you. But you can use that observer to realize you're just starting to slip out of
Hmm.
body. Same thing when you're dreaming at night, but also during a daydream. You're trying to concentrate on a conversation, and then you realize, like, I have not heard the last 5 words you said or the
Right.
last 10 minutes you've said because I'm somewhere else. Well, who is that someone who is somewhere else? You're daydreaming. You're thinking about what you're going to do later. Who is that that's doing the daydreaming and rehearsing for that
Hmm.
dinner party you're having that night? So there is this ability, once we start realizing that our awareness can expand, we can then use that to push those boundaries and step into greater spaces of consciousness. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it does, and I think it's fascinating. You talk about there are so many ways in which what I've experienced and what you've experienced are so similar. As I said to you earlier before we get on the show, that I've
Uh-huh.
been a medium my whole life and didn't know it because it wasn't what I thought it was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And I remember moments decades ago where I would catch myself talking to someone. It was like I woke up
Mhm,
and I was
mhm.
saying, I don't know what I was saying. Whatever I was saying, I'm like, am I talking to myself? What's going, that's crazy. Like, why am I talking to myself? Like, I must have been in a really great daydream, is what I used to say to myself. I must have been
Yeah.
like thinking of something else. And I'm engaging in this conversation with someone that isn't even existing. But what was that? Was I somewhere else and snapped out? I don't know.
Ye And see, that this is what Bob Monroe did. Once he realized he wasn't dying when he was having these spontaneous
Right.
out-of-body experiences, his curiosity kicked in. It's like, what can I do? How can I explore this? What is it about this? Now, can I go into something that the messenger showed me? It has to do with consciousness and with
Please.
time. And I
Please.
think it might kind of explain where some of your skills might come from. Okay. And
Absolutely. Yep.
all of this information is was so foreign to me. This is all strictly from the messengers. The messengers were telling me there's two things I want to talk about. One is time. Now,
Hmm.
I always thought time was from event A to event B.
Hmm.
It's a straight line, time marches forward only. Okay. Now, they talk about something called the POE, point of existence. In my book, it gets complicated, but the point of existence is a way to visualize consciousness. That's all. That's it.
Hmm.
And what is consciousness? It's awareness. No big deal, right? Well, for most of us, consciousness looks like a particle, just a tiny dot, and it's usually resting so comfortably inside the physical body that we think we are our physical bodies. Um, I used to go to meetings, and when we would go around the room and introduce ourselves, I thought, yes, I would do tally marks on who would say, I am Candice Sanderson versus my name is. Quite
Hmm.
often, I was the only person who said my name is because I knew I wasn't this body. I've always known that. But so many people go around thinking they are their bodies. So now let's use that point of existence, which is
Hmm.
a dot. And when they go from event A to event B, dot, 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 on this straight line, messengers say, no, no. Time is a sine wave, a curvy sine wave. So now when we go from a point from event A to event B, and we're on this time wave that's wavy, we see time's a little more complicated. It's like, okay, so that's why it does speed up when you're having fun. And it definitely slows down when you're having a root canal. We've all experienced that.
Right.
Now, what the messengers tell me is you can expand your POE, your point of existence, into this globe of life force energy. And how do you do that? Through meditation, through prayer, through spontaneous whatever, through having a near-death experience, through plant-based rituals. There's all sorts of ways. But what happens is, and dreaming and daydreaming, you start expanding. So now, instead of having a dot, a particle state, you've expanded into a field state. Now, look at this curvy timeline. And the more you expand, the more of that timeline is contained within your field of awareness. The messenger showed me what happens when you have a near-death experience. That little particle, when you expand, catapults out to the very outer limits of your globe of life force energy. That's why so many people with an NDE say, I looked down and saw my body.
Sure.
Now, when you expand like that, then this is where I think psychics, for example, can tell you the past. And if they're really expanded, they can tell you about past lives. Now, as far as the future goes, that's not really set in stone, but they can tell you the probabilities of the future.
Right.
But when I started looking at everything through that lens of energy and expanding awareness, then it allows me to expand and taste a field of energy where everything is connected, and we can use our emotional guidance system. We can bring in much love and compassion and higher vibrational energies, and that will keep us expanding even more and greater.
I think the whole thing is fascinating and a little hard to grasp, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's just so much bigger than we are. It's incredible. Your messengers have been, well, are your messengers, because we talked about, some of your experiences with angelic connections and your cultural icons. Are these the messengers that you've connected with, or?
Yes, I have had so many messengers. My first book that you see behind me, The Reluctant Messenger, Tales from Beyond Belief. And the messengers gave me the title, but Tales from Beyond Belief, because they seemed like tales to me. They were certainly beyond my belief system, and I was the one having them. But the subtitle is An Ordinary Person's Extraordinary Journey into the Unknown. So if something like this major opening that I had, if this could happen to me, Scott, it could happen to anyone. But I have so many messengers that come in. I have communicated with the angelic realm. I have gone to a place that they refer to as the realms of light, where I've met with ascended masters. I can see and sense energy, like the seraphim angels, for example. When I see them with my hands, I see a purple mist that comes from the palms of my hands, and I know it's the seraphim.
Are you seeing it with these eyes, or with the mind's eye?
With the real eyes.
The real
which
eyes.
is no, which is
Okay.
the real is that other side.
The other side.
The real
Gotcha.
is not the 3D. The real,
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yes. Good. But like my second book is called The Reluctant Messenger Returns. And it's all tales about the angelic realm. And I have 2 whole chapters that I cover on Metatron. And Metatron, I went to a class. It was like 6 or 8 week class. And I had no idea what a star tetrahedron was. It's a pyramid, one pointing up, one pointing down, and they collapse together. And this is known as a Merkaba when it becomes a vehicle of light. and it's associated with Metatron. I knew none of this. And as I go through that class by class, I get these beautiful symbols that would come into me. And I didn't even know about sacred geometry then, which is great because I was a neophyte. I wasn't bringing in information that I'd read about. This was all new to me. But I ended up, after several weeks, building this, what I found out later was a Merkaba. So that is Metatron. I can now use that Merkaba if I want as a tool to rapidly go into the 5D even farther. I have a lot of messengers that do not self-identify. And, Scott, I don't stop and ask their names. To me, that's never been important. If it's important, they tell me. But the messages that come in are just so beautiful. Like for angels, for example, I generally, unless it's an archangel, I see these gorgeous ribbons of pastel pink and green. They look like chiffon scarves that just float in the air. And normally I know that I'm connecting with an angel because it's like, when I start crying. There's this, the energy and the love and the compassion is just so overwhelming that I just burst into tears. But I've learned to sense energy, see energy with my third eye. And that energy is like a communication, and I know what it is related to. It's just such a cool experience. Let me share one thing about like white buffalo calf woman.
Sure,
have you
please.
ever heard of her?
No.
I hadn't either. But some friends of mine went, several years ago, said, let's go to this church in Fort Myers, which is just north of us in Naples. And there's a place called Church of Spiritual Light. They were having a Reiki and a crystal bowl meditation. So we're all laying around on the floor, and in the middle is a lady playing bowls, and they do Reiki. Well, as soon as we, laid down, they stopped that background music and they started the crystal bowls. They just kind of blended in together. And I heard this beat of a drum. And to this day, I don't know if it was actually there or not in the music. I suspect it wasn't. But it took me on another journey. And I was relatively new into having these visions and stuff. And I wasn't telling people about it. But when the exercise started, with the bowls, I looked above and I noticed this distortion in the ceiling. And that was with my physical eyes. So I just opened into that space, and this portal opened, and out came this large group of Native Americans and they referred to themselves as the ancestors. And then here comes another tier of them, a smaller group, and they were called the Council of Elders. And then came this just beautiful throng of angels that came in and surrounded the room. So we have 3 tiers of these fabulous beings around the edge of the room. And then in comes this white buffalo calf, albino. I can see with my third eye, blue, milky blue eyes, even the eyelids and inside the ears are pink. And I'm thinking, what on earth is this? And then I saw more movement, and I thought the mama buffalo was going to come out, but there was this gorgeous Native American woman. I don't know if American, but a Native woman. And she starts talking about the beauty of the innocence of the calf, the purity of the white, the innocence of the child. And that these are the energy, she didn't say energies, but these are what we need to take on in order for miracles to occur. I mean, after all, we were at a healing session, and it was just beautiful, and I'm writing as fast as I can. When this was over, Reverend Renee Bledsoe was the minister. And she said, have you ever been here before? And I said, no. She said, did you know that our church is built on the medicine wheel? It's like, no. I mean, I don't even know what that is. But
Right.
then she said, in the back room, they had a crystal bed from Brazil that was a portal for healing. I'm thinking, oh, that must have been what I saw. She said, where the bed is, at the foot of the bed is a painting that one of the Reiki masters did. It was a picture of a portal surrounded by a tier of ancestors, a tier of the Council of Elders, and a tier of angels. Then she said at the other end of the bed was a picture of white buffalo calf woman. I'm from Paducah, Kentucky, Western Kentucky.
Right,
We
right.
didn't learn about white buffalo calf woman. Certainly didn't in my church either. But she is she's just one of the icons in the Lakota Sioux Nation. And she leads these beautiful people. But that was another example of me getting information that I was really a little bit too afraid and too chicken to share. But I
Sure.
thought, I've got to, okay, people can roll their eyes and they can laugh, but
Yeah.
it just about blew me away when all this information was validated.
Right.
But when we step into these spaces and like when we're getting a message from someone, it's like, you want to say, no, I'm making this up. Just hold space for that and open your heart and then just make it up. The messengers tell me that energy that comes in from the 5D to the 3D is like water coming in through a hose. It starts off and that hose might be crimped. So when you make things up and you're allowing that energy to flow, just like I did as a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
stepping back and just observing and documenting what occurs. And then you find you're in this magical space where things happen that you can't explain, but you
Right.
might very well realize the truth of it.
That is the truth right there. And it's funny, when I was learning to control this mediumship, and I said, sometimes I can't make it happen. Like it just has to. And you know what the advice they gave me? Just open your mouth and talk. Just talk, because then
Yes.
it will come. And they're so
Yes.
right. They're so
It's
right.
it's priming the pump and just allowing that information to flow and just see what happens. You just do it, And I was so hesitant about what are people going to think? Here I'm a psychologist and I'm doing all of this stuff. And I did end up retiring. And then 2 weeks later, publishing my first book. But I worked for a couple of years as a psychologist with all of this information. And although I could not ethically speak about, like, for example, when we would have a student pass away or a staff member, I was part of a crisis team that would go, and there was so much I wanted to say is, they're not gone, they're just right here. Well, of course I could not say that. But what I could do is use the skill set that I had.
Right.
And I would open my heart to them. I would surround them with energy of love and compassion, things that helped every bit as much, probably more than what my words could share. We are all energy beings. I start my first book out with a quote from Tesla. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I see that someone asked,
Yes, let me put that up on the screen. I was going to ask
Okay.
you. Yep. Is Candice referring to the timeline she's drawing is like a frequency?
Oh my gosh, of course it is. I never really thought about it, but you're right that it is a frequency because and I never even thought of it like that, but everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And it's a matter of learning to manipulate those things in order to access what might be inaccessible when we're in that particle state within our bodies. But I never thought of that as a frequency. Of course it is. So thank
But
you for
that's
that
what it
question.
looks like, when you talk about it
It
bending
is.
upon each other. Yeah, actually, good point,
Yeah.
Anton. Good point. Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing that
Very
up.
good.
Yeah, you had said something to me about spontaneous healing too. What is that?
Oh. Well, it's interesting because I told you my backstory. I went to Lifeline and it changed my
Mhm,
life. I got this practice and my belief systems crumbled, and that was the backstory. Okay.
mhm.
Well, there was another backstory that I didn't even know about until when I retired. I finally had time, and what I decided on, all those things that you put on your to-do list that you don't have time for. Well, one thing was to replace my phone. I went through my phone and I found some voice recordings because, of course, you realize when I'm driving to work, I have all
Mhm.
these recordings that I'm transcribing. And I found this voice recording and I listened to it. It was from Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013. So, several months before
Sure.
I started channeling. And I had channeled a message and did not even know it. It was
Wow.
my voice, and I was whispering because I had a paralyzed vocal cord. Now, I'm going to back up to Thanksgiving. So, Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I don't know what date that was, but I know it was in November of 2012. I had a bilateral thyroidectomy. Easy peasy, right? Go in there, take care of it. No. 3 months later, I still could not speak. My right vocal cord was paralyzed. I had to, as a psychologist, it's pretty difficult, wear a microphone and a voice box that I wore on a lanyard or around my belt because all I could do was whisper. So my doctor finally sends me to an ENT who, in that week of Valentine's Day, scopes my throat, puts this tiny camera about the size of a horse up my nose and down my throat, and he has me, repeat different sounds. Now, if both of your vocal cords are paralyzed, you die. So I didn't die, but I could not speak.
Is that right?
I
I
was
didn't
supposed.
realize that.
Oh yes, yeah, because it's very instrumental in breathing, which is
Oh, okay.
pretty important.
Mhm.
But so my right vocal cord is paralyzed, and I have medical proof of that. I was supposed to return the next week and do the they were talking about, they can rebuild this with a Teflon flap or something. But I was going to Monroe Institute that weekend for a long weekend, a working retreat. I was on the leadership council of their volunteer group where we set up all these satellite chapters all over the world. And so because I was on the leadership council, I had to speak. Well, that was complicated. I had my own microphone. I had a microphone for the room, which was getting feedback. Then we had a microphone for streaming. And I'm just saying, this is what's going on. I have a paralyzed vocal cord. I know a lot of healers go there. And I said, I welcome any healing. Well, they did a healing group on me, and there were people there from Barbara Brennan's School of Light, and it was great. Didn't do anything, but it felt great. The very last day, it's only a 3-day retreat, we have some new technology that they wanted us to try out because we had like 50 people there. They gave us 3 selections of Monroe Sound Science. It's like it's a step up from the, original binaural beats. They were like 10 or 12 minutes each, no verbal guidance, just the tones. And we had to write down what was going on, whether we liked them, whatever. And during the second meditation, Scott, Buddha came to me. Now you've got to realize, recovering Southern Baptist, Buddha
Mhm.
is not on my
That's not
radar
part of it.
whatsoever. So that's why I know I'm not making this up. Buddha comes to me and he says, be silent for 24 hours and you will be healed. So we all go back to regroup, and I write my notes down because it's like, I am not going to speak. I am not going to speak. It was like 24 hours. I was home. It was awful. There was a snowstorm, and I had to get, our flights were canceled, and I wrote the information down, and people got my flights changed for me. I was not going to speak. I got home, and I was speaking like this. I went back to work on Monday, and some people actually thought, they were kidding, but not really, that I had faked this for 3 months. But you know what? I didn't need it, but I had the medical proof if I wanted it.
Right.
Now, I did not realize until I found that voice recording of myself a few days before I went to Monroe, and I am whispering, that the reason I had my vocal cords paralyzed was they were preparing my body energetically to become the voice of, or the channel for, an angel. And I mean, you would think that something that significant I would remember, totally gone from my memory until years later, 2018, when I actually am, getting my new phone, and I'm saying, what is this? But that was the start of my second book, The Reluctant Messenger Unleashed. All about the angel realm. But I mean, it's not, it's not something like I had cancer and I was going to die.
No,
it
but
was
it doesn't matter.
truly a medical miracle that took place from guidance, from Buddha, from an energy that presented himself or itself or whatever as
Right.
Buddha. But it healed me. It healed me.
Louisa, thank you for joining us. Terrific program and valuable sharing. Hello, all. Thank you for joining us tonight. So nice.
Louisa, hi. Thank you.
I'd love for people to find out how they can get your books and how they can learn more about you and the Monroe Institute and all of these things, because I find it, I know other people, if they're sitting here watching this for an hour and 12 minutes, they're going to want to know. They stuck with us. So your website is scrolling across the bottom, www.candicesanderson.com. And your books are available there or through Amazon as well?
You know what? They used to be available there, but I'm trying to simplify my life. So I don't even, I took those down. Amazon's the best way to get them. They're also, my two major books are at Monroe Institute if you're ever there.
Wow.
But Monroe, also, just check my website. I've got, I have a YouTube channel that's called, that's just called The Reluctant Messenger. How clever. I've got like 199 videos on there. But I'm in the middle of doing a series on out-of-body experiences. And I'm talking about the different tools that we can use, tools that came to me spontaneously that I realized at the time I did not realize they were tools, but they are tools that can help you achieve an out-of-body experience easier. So, check that out, but you can find all that on our website.
Yes. And every once in a while, I'll see you post something and I just love it. I think it's fascinating. So please check out her website. Please check out the Monroe Institute. Please check out her books for sure. And I just want to thank you for being here. This has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we could have gone another hour. I feel like we could have gone.
Well, we could have. I can't believe this.
I know.
But thank
I tell
Scott,
you,
for having me.
Well, no, it's a pleasure. And when I asked you to come on the show, we were with a radio station based out of Ogden, Utah. And I switched it up a little bit because I really wanted to change the show to something more spirit-based so that we could have these kinds of conversations. And I wanted it to be a call-in show because sometimes we'll do readings and people will call in and it's nice, but they didn't want to do that. So we broke ways. And when I was with them, I had a 54-minute, that was it. 54 minutes, we were stopped. And so here we are at an hour and 14. And I mean, admittedly, there are some guests that at 30 minutes, you're thinking, oh my God, how much longer do I have to talk? Because they don't know how to have a conversation. But then you get the great guests like you, and that doesn't happen. We can chat and go on and on and on. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you all for watching tonight and joining us and listening. Please check out Candice Sanderson, www.candicesanderson.com. Remember, Candice is Candice. I don't know why I want to put an A there, but that Candice with an I, so you make sure you can find it. Thank you all for joining us. Candy, would you hang out a little bit? I'd love to chat with you for a minute at the end of the show. Have a great night, everybody, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us today for Spirit Talk Live with Scott Allen. Please remember to subscribe to Spirit Talk Live on YouTube and share on all your social media channels.